Hello, my friend, and welcome to the Sales Podcast. I'm Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer, your host. We are coming up on the last month of the first half of the year. How the heck are your sales going, huh? How are you going to end June? How are you going to end the quarter, the half year, and what are you doing to prepare for the second half of the year? Time waits for no man, does it? But hey, you're listening to this, so you're getting your head in the right place. And you've come to the right place to grow your sales. Today we have Mr. Rory O'Connor. Rory I met through the Tampa Bay Frogman Swim. You hear me talk about that. It's on each episode in the show notes. A link to that. I've been doing that for several years now. A classmate of mine actually from the Air Force Academy he'd cross-commissioned over into the Navy and actually just retired as a captain in 2006. He retired in April of 2017. But Rory helped co-found this event. Last year they raised $500,000. He is a retired SEAL himself. He did one tour as a Navy SEAL, and we get into that. He's a financial advisor now with Edward Jones. We could barely talk about that because of all the limitations in the financial industry. So no stock prognostication on this one. But we just talk about his history and his mindset and how he got through BUDS and how he got into business, how he got into financial services, and how all this ties into life. Right? It's interesting to hear how the Frogman Swim has evolved. We're releasing this one very quickly. I just interviewed him on Friday, June 2nd, and we're going to produce this and publish it within 4 days because we're helping get the word out about the Tampa Bay, or I keep saying Tampa Bay, I've done it for so long, the Golden Gate Frogman Swim. So they are now going to do this on the West Coast because it's growing, and they keep the swim limited on purpose. It's not a popularity contest. They don't bring in like famous swimmers and athletes. It's not a race. It's a fundraiser. And so doing this on the West Coast will help them reach a broader audience. And like I said, 100% of the money goes to the Navy SEAL Foundation, which benefits the families of those SEALs that are killed in the line of duty. And so I'm happy to have him on. This is a little bit different interview, but I think you'll still get a lot out of it, just hearing his perspective, somebody that's been getting things done since the 80s. And as I mentioned in the last couple of episodes, if you are interested in me starting a private group to go on with this conversation, to take it into another medium and expand upon it, opt in by texting. The number is 44222. And text the word whisper, and it'll send you an email with a link to a survey. Let me know a little bit more about what you're working on and then what you'd like to see. If you could do that, it'd be a big help. I'm not going to spam you. If I do, you can always report me to the authorities and you can opt out. Okay? But this is a way just to let me know you're out there and what you're working on. So now let's bring on our guest, Mr. Rory O'Connor. Rory O'Connor, former Navy SEAL, current purple belt in jiu-jitsu, and organizer of the Tampa Bay Frogman Swim. And now, what are we calling it? The Golden Gate Frogman Swim?
Yes, sir. The Golden Gate Frogman Swim.
All right. Very nice. All the way from, you're in the Tampa area, correct?
That's right.
All right. Welcome to the Sales Podcast, man. Your life is now complete. How does it feel to rise to such an auspicious occasion and be on the show?
I don't know, Wes. I never really thought I'd be here, but I'll try not to get too emotional. Just don't Barbara Walters me.
All right. I know. I saw what you were saying. You'd like to thank your BUDS instructors, your mom, your God, and you made it, man. You made it.
I appreciate it.
You and I have been hanging out on and off for 3.5 years now since I did my first Tampa Bay Frogman Swim.
Okay.
But for our listeners that may not be familiar with that and your history, you do a bunch of things. You're an investment advisor as well. And, of course, we can't get too crazy with that. That's why I got out of that business years ago, because of the restrictions. But anyway, I won't ask you to forecast any stocks or anything crazy. But give us a little history of Rory O'Connor for our listeners, and then we'll dive into the charity, the organization, how that's structured, and kind of the big picture.
All right. From Fort Lauderdale, Florida, originally born and raised. Grew up, bit of a waterman, skin diving, lots of beach activities, fishing, running, swimming, and heard about the Navy SEALs when I was about 9 or 10 years old. My dad used to talk about the Navy frogmen. He was on a Gator freighter. And
a Gator freighter? What the heck is that?
Amphib Navy, LSD, landing ship dock, landing ship tanks, landing platform. Yep, flat bottom boats, rough ride. So he would tell me about the Navy frogmen and about their training, and he was a pretty athletic guy. And as time went on, I was in ROTC in high school. Wasn't exactly college material, and just kind of graduated, okay. But I really wanted to go in the Navy, and I really had my heart set on going to BUD/S, what little I knew about it at the time. This is back in 84, 85. I graduated in 84. Went right in the Navy. I was a corpsman. That's back when they used to use source ratings. And I thought that sounded pretty cool. You can be like a medic. And I enjoyed it. But I went to boot camp out in San Diego. Went to Corps School in San Diego. And my BUD/S class was class 134. We formed up the end of March of 1985. And I was fortunate not to get hurt. And I made it through on my first run. Didn't get any rollbacks. And our class graduated September 20th of 85 and proceeded to go on to jump school. And because I was a corpsman, went to Special Operation Technician School, which is like a diving medicine specialty. And then checked into SEAL Team 1 in December of 85. Did a couple of deployments and stayed in the reserves, got out in 88. Worked at UCSD Medical Center at their hyperbaric medicine while I went to college. Initially was thinking I wanted to go to medical school, but working at a teaching hospital, saw the brutal hours and the lack of a life outside of their profession, in my opinion, and eventually didn't want to do that. So moved back to Fort Lauderdale in 91 and continued going to college, finished my bachelor's degree at Florida Atlantic University, and met my wife along the way. We have two kids now, Caitlin and Thomas. Caitlin's 26, Tom will be 23. And I initially started off back when I first finished college in 95, took me a couple of years. Did banking, actually, lease and retail banking for auto dealerships, which started off to be a lot of fun, but as soon as the bank, I went to Edward Jones after being at Bank One, which is now.
Your signal cut out for a little bit. So you got into banking and then leasing.
Yeah, I got into banking for about 7 or 8 years. Frankly, I hated it, and
I thought you liked it at first.
Well, I did. You're right. At first, I did like it until they started just hatcheting it. I was in what's called indirect lending, and you were a hero if your rates were right. And you could be Johnny on the spot and be very good customer service, but if you were out by half a point, dealerships wouldn't use you. So I actually did very well at it. I had a staff of 6 salesmen underneath me and a staff of underwriters, and we actually did very well in Florida. But they started dismantling that with the whole leasing craze when it ended around 99, 2000. Banks got too competitive with the residuals, and it just became a bloodbath. When the cars got turned in, the residual values were ridiculous, and banks lost billions of dollars. At any rate, went to traditional loan within the bank, and along the way, at a UDT SEAL Association meeting, I met a friend who was working for Edward Jones, and I'd always heard good things about Edward Jones, so we put our investments with him, and over about 3.5 years, I was rather enamored with it, and I liked their I liked Edward Jones' training platform. I liked their business model with the one-person office. So in end of 03, early 04, I cut away from the bank. I'd really just had enough. I'd gotten my master's degree along the way and worked remotely from the house, lots of dead ends, unfortunately. Here in Tampa, they didn't have any physical presence. So it was either move to Chicago or Phoenix, and it just didn't work out that way. So I went to work for Edward Jones, which that I've loved. Great company, phenomenal training, phenomenal support, culture of volunteerism, which allows me to do what I do with the Frogman Swim. And, along the way, just did different things. Did some Rotary, started a Boy Scout pack, was involved in YMCA, competed in masters swimming, competed in open water swimming, triathlon, organized some triathlon as fundraisers along the way. And about 2007, got involved with a group called the Semper Fi Injured Marine Fund. And they put on a camp hosted by retired General two-star Tom Jones up in the Allegheny Mountains, just outside of Pittsburgh. And was involved with that for about 3 or 4 years, where it was a transition program at first, and then they decided to sort of change direction and just focus on PTSD. And we would have a group of 40 to 50, mostly Marines, but some Army, some sailors in there too, where we would work with 40 to 50, break them up into teams of 4 or 5 guys and some gals. And we would have a team leader mentor, which I was one, and we'd work with them all week. And through that group, I met other veterans such as myself, one of which is a former chairman of the Navy SEAL Foundation. And which brings us up to September of 2009, how this all got started. And in September of 2009, Lieutenant Dan Kanasan over in Afghanistan stepped on a pressure plate and lost both his legs. And word got around, Tampa Bay community's got a pretty big special operations presence with MacDill and the UDT SEAL Association. Word got around in early December that some people were putting together a swim. Very informal. The ask was $500 per swimmer to raise $500, and that you provide your own kayaker. So that was January 2nd, I believe, Sunday of 2010. And we all showed up. 39 of us showed up on the beach. Everybody brought their kayaker. Half a dozen boats showed up to escort us along the way. Somebody, I think, told a friend at Marine Patrol. But that was about it. That was the extent. The planning was kind of, put together some coffee and donuts or bagels or whatever the heck they had there. One of the founders.
I heard it was Irish whiskey and beer.
We hear that they may have graduated to that, but as the race director, I cannot confirm that. Moving right along. So we got in the water, and what's so significant about that swim, Wes, is that it was cold. People think of Florida, and they think sunny beaches, hot weather, humidity, and true, that is the weather probably 8-9 months out of the year. However, on the West Coast and up the Gulf Coast, it gets cold. That morning, the air temperature was 37. Some of the kayakers were in dry suits, and the water temperature in the bay was 55. Mm-hmm. Now, there's some argument. It keeps getting colder every time you talk to somebody, but it was 58 at the bay itself, but the shipping channel, it dropped into 55. It was cold. And I thought I was kind of toughing it out. I wore Farmer John's. I didn't have sleeves on, and it was painful. Been a while since I've been in cold water. Anything really under 60 degrees is starting to get chilly. And this fella, as we line up for the picture, 39 of us, this one fella takes off his jacket, and all he's got on is a Speedo. And my son's, right? Yeah, that's right. That's Doolittle. And my son and I are standing together. My 15-year-old son, had just finished his first year of high school swimming. He was a distance guy. And they let me bring him in. He raised $500 too. So I'm talking with my son. And I said, you know what? This guy either is like a channel swimmer, really knows what he's doing, or he's showboating and he's a fool. Well, it turns out that it was the former, of course.
Yeah.
John Doolittle is an English Channel swimmer and quite the accomplished swimmer, and he's from the San Francisco Bay Area, so he's quite familiar with cold water. But the guy swam it in a Speedo. And what else is so significant? Two things. The news was there, and Bay News 9, and at the time the St. Pete Times, which is now the Tampa Bay Times, they took this iconic picture of John Doolittle, at the time Commander Doolittle, raising the two fingers, which at one time used to mean the victory sign, or depending on your generation, now it's the peace sign. But it was such an iconic shot. The sun's coming up. Everybody else is in a wetsuit, dry suit, and here's John getting in the water in Speedo. And, he, of course, did it. And just a bold, statement. And they interviewed John on the other side. And one of them said, well, why did you do this in a Speedo? And he said, and I quote, because I'm doing this for the guys that are on a long road to recovery. And they're going through much more pain than I'll ever know. So I wanted to make it as uncomfortable as possible. Mm-hmm. And John sort of set the tone for what the swim is about. So we named an event or an award after him. And we wound up raising $34,000 that year. All the money went to Dan Knassen. And in the wake of it, there was an email that Dan O'Shea sent out. Dan O'Shea and Terry Tomlin were the original founders, along with a young man named Sam Farnett. Sam actually came up with a couple of the ideas. But they sent out an email and said, hey, who wants to help make this more of a formal event? And my friend, the former chairman of the Navy SEAL Foundation, I was telling him about it. He said, hey, do you want to make it an event for the Navy SEAL Foundation? And I said, yeah, I've just cleared my plate, just finished being president of my Rotary Club. Swim season had ended, which I was doing some coaching. And so we took it on, met at Wing House a few times. Kurt Ott and I wound up being the two in addition to Terry and Dan. And in the beginning, Terry, Dan, Kurt, and I, we created the logo, the name, started getting the momentum going, decided we should probably ask people for some permission. So we got the Coast Guard to give us a thumbs up. And the ideas started rolling on how to do the swim and what to come up with on the other side, and create a coin, which is a reflection of the logo. It's Freddy the Frog. And we repeated the event the following January of 2011 and raised $55,000 with 55 swimmers. And obviously it was quite the success. We kept our costs down, try to mirror what the foundation does, which is less than 10 cents on the dollar for operating costs. And voila, we were a hit. And we wound up getting on some radio, some TV shows. Terry Tomlin really opened the door for a lot of that. Rest in peace. Terry died May of 2016. And he's sorely missed. But Terry, for the media, really did. He opened up a lot of doors for us with the print, radio, TV. Dan O'Shea had some contacts that certainly contributed tremendously to that. It just sort of built from there. Grassroots, word of mouth. And we made the swim each year a little bit more organized and a little bit more crisp. Provided T-shirts and hoodies for the participants. After the second year, we started getting, a couple of Gold Star families involved. Keeping on point for what the swim and where the money goes to and what it's all about. And I think we've always done a good job of that, attracted like minds so that we don't want to make it too much of a business. We want to raise awareness, raise money, have a good time doing it, but run an organized and safe event. So that brings us to where we're at today. We just raised a little over $500,000 this past January. The previous January, we were at $600,000, but that included a couple of dinners that we put on. And the previous years was about $400,000, right under $300,000, $250,000 a couple of years. Our running total right now is about $2.3 million.
That's awesome.
Yep.
So Well, yeah, you have been making it crisp, because ever since I started swimming, I mean, it's like global cooling, like we're breaking ice to get into the water. I mean, dude, why? You got to make it warmer for me. I'm Air Force man. I can't be swimming through ice.
Hey, the support boats are nice and warm. They've got some amenities on them, I'm told.
Yeah, it is. It's a great cause. So I've shown up 3 times and swam it twice. One of them was weathered out. What was that? That was 2015? 2016.
Yep.
I got to think through the years. But, and that's how I got involved was John Doolittle, classmate of mine from the Air Force, baby. And I don't know what got into him crossing over to the Navy. I'm still.
He wanted to work. He wanted to work for a living, Wes.
Well, that's true. I mean, I did kind of have a little fun in the Air Force, but hey,
that's awesome. No, we joke around about it, but I mean, it's awesome to have the cross service. We've got some Army folks out there supporting us. I know there's a couple of Marines. Ken Bowen, who you met when we went to San Diego. Ken is a former Marine. No, you're never a former Marine, I guess. But
no, yeah, we've got a former. They're never ex.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, man, that's awesome. So, well, let's go back to the beginning because people do like to hear some of the stories about getting through buds and, people, how could I have made it? What was it really like? And I've had quite a few SEALs on to help drive awareness. And it's run the gamut from some guys who are like, hey, piece of cake. I'm going to make it no matter what. I mean, even talking with John, he said he'd be laughing with his buddies, like, we're not quitting. And then others, Joel Lambert was very open and honest. He said he would sob every night. He's like, I don't know if I have what it takes to get through this. So along that spectrum, where would you say you fell during that time?
Wow. I think I could, relate to both of those. I was young. I was 18. So as the class thinned out, I stood out a little bit more. And there was a period out at San Clemente Island where there were a couple of instructors that were a bit older. And however I got their attention, it wasn't good for a few days. They gave me my own personal hell week for the first week out there. And that got a little over the top. And with hindsight, they definitely were after me because I was 18. But I think
they just wanted to test you to see if you really were committed.
I think that's, in hindsight, I think that's what it was about. I do. There were some times there. What it was about was the first morning of weapons inspection. I'm a bit of a neat freak anyhow, so I felt like, no problem. Weapons cleaning isn't going to be a big deal. And the instructor came up to me and he said, "So how do you think your weapon is squared away?" I said, "Who ya, instructor, such and such." And he said, "Well, we'll see." And he breaks out a set of Q-tips. Like, oh, man. Well, he proceeds to get all the Q-tips filthy black. And, as I said, I thought I did a pretty good job, right? And I didn't. And so he started putting the Q-tips, and I wasn't the only one. There were a couple of others. But I think this was Tuesday morning. I said Monday. It's Tuesday morning. And, I just went to town on the weapon. And we went to the range that day. Went to town on the weapon Tuesday night. Wednesday morning, same thing. Thursday morning, same thing. So I'm going on maybe an hour or two of sleep a night now because I'm putting in time trying to clean this weapon. I had one instructor Thursday night that I guess had taken pity on me, and he was trying to run the bolt under hot water. And some of those weapons just sweat. You can clean them, and they're still going to sweat. And if you want to get hung up on finding a piece of an M16 that's got a little bit of grind to it, you'll find it. And I think the bigger lesson was to just grit it out, pay attention to detail. Is it functional? Keep it clean, obviously. But by Saturday morning, I was so exhausted, I fell asleep in the weapons test Friday afternoon and I failed it. So I'm standing tall Saturday morning, and I was wondering whether they were going to bounce me out because I had failed like 2 or 3 weapons inspections. I failed a weapons class of the test. Never had a safety violation, which that's more of an issue in BUD/S. But so they sent me down to the surf, and the other guy that went down to the surf was the other young guy. He was 19. And they had us down there for a while. They'd kind of forgotten about us. And
so when you say go down the surf, you mean like where you just lay in there and let the water just pound on you for a while?
That's exactly right. Yeah. And out at the island, it's always a little bit chillier out at the island. It's 60 miles out in the Pacific versus the Strand if the Strand is 60, 62, 63, the island's going to be a couple degrees cooler.
Oh, you're talking about like San Clemente Island, right?
Correct. San Clemente. That's right.
Yeah. And that's where you do the weapons training.
Right. So weapons, demolition, you put everything together while you're out there. You've done land warfare, the compass course before going out to the island. And so you put it all together and do small group tactics and SOPs and whatnot. And then at any rate, so back to the Saturday morning story, and to answer your original question, they made me and Doug, we fell in with our class to do PT, and we're both soaking wet. We're in our full dress uniform, soaking wet, sugar cookie, which is, we're full of sand. And we had to do the PT, and then we had to do the run. And the run was a 5-mile conditioning run. And when we started off, the instructor said to us specifically, "You better not fall behind." So that was kind of a warning, we've got our eye on you. And I just remember we rounded the last part of the airport. It was a runway run. And as we rounded it, we're soaking wet, we're in full boots. The rest of the class at the time, I think is, they're in shorts, t-shirt. They're still wearing boots for the run. And we're trying to keep up with that. It's just a near impossibility. And I just remember thinking to myself, I'm going out of here with my class on a plane, or I'm going out of here in a body bag. And I just remember that for me was the moment where I was like, screw it. I'm going to pop, or I'm going to pass. And I ran, something I look back, and maybe it was more dramatic in my mind than at the time, but I caught up to the class and then caught up with the instructor who's leading the run. Got back to the compound. I was exhausted. And the one instructor who had done all the weapons tests, he comes up to me and he smacks the bill of my hat. And he said, "That's what we were looking for." And for the next 3 weeks out at the island, I was a ghost. I never heard from anybody, never heard anything again on the weapons test, passed all the rest of my other tests, and it was just funny. So they definitely had their eye on me. And, as far as having fun, I would say a good part of BUD/S was having a blast. Surf passage, I had a blast. Anything in the water, I had a blast. When we were out patrolling out at San Clemente Island, a lot of fun. We had a great class. We all got along pretty well. I had a great squad, great boat crew.
So, I mean, you couldn't go to like HR and fill out a comment card and like get a little safe space, a little trigger warning.
No,
have that back in 485?
No, sir. No, believe it or not, you had to just kind of eat it. Now, it's funny you mentioned that. Now I hear they're fitted, and I don't know if this is true, but I hear that they're actually fitted for wetsuits. In 1985, you got to go through a pile of wetsuits and get something that might kind of fit you, but it certainly wasn't fitted. So it was too tight, you couldn't move. It was too loose, it defeated the purpose. So it was, it was a little bit different.
Old school, baby. So
last hard class. Yeah. That's what every team guy will tell you. I was in the last hard BUD/S class, but I went to SEAL Team 1. Real honor to go to SEAL Team 1. Work with some old timers there that were Vietnam era. As I said, did a couple platoons. Deployed to the Philippines, Thailand, South Korea, Australia. I thoroughly enjoyed my time in the teams.
Yeah, cool. So at 18 and 19 years old, is it just youthful optimism I mean, because when you're getting ground down like that, I had a very minor related experience, at the Air Force Academy. My roommate and I just got singled out by a couple of ladies that they were juniors, we were freshmen, and I don't know, for a week they just picked on us, come back early from class, get extra attention during meals. But I mean, nothing physical like what you endured. And, I would look over at my roommate, and I mean, I guess it's that thing, you just don't want to let your buddy down, right? Like every day I'd wake up and I hate this place. Then I'd look at my roommate and I'm like, well, he's still here, so I'm not quitting. Did you kind of have that attitude, or did you, because your dad kind of painted a picture, did you have a bigger vision of what you were getting into and you just had to stick it out?
I just wanted it so bad. I think I had come to identify myself as that's who I was. I mean, I can't say that I ever got into this dark moment where I wanted to quit. I got into moments where I thought, in my own head, I thought, well, maybe I'm too young to be here. Maybe they're gonna weed me out of here. Maybe I'm gonna fail out. But I wasn't gonna quit.
Right.
And I think everybody that goes through, I would say most, you get guys, there is the exception, that goes through and that just nothing seems to bother them. They ace all their tests. They're great on the run, the swim, the obstacle course. They're, great personality. They get along with everybody. I mean, you do get some superhuman people, but, everybody's got their challenge. Somebody maybe not that fast on the run, or they're not as comfortable in the water. It's hard to prepare to, put on scuba gear and have, two instructors literally, ripping the hose out of your mouth and making a knot in it, and, ripping your stuff off and spinning you upside down. And, maybe you get a knee in the stomach accidentally. It's a different challenge for everybody.
Yep.
But yeah, I went through a period, maybe the first couple of weeks, where I had shin splints pretty bad. And I went to medical because I'd never had that kind of pain. And they said, well, they did x-rays. They said they're not stress fractures. They're shin splints. And it's that, that front calf muscle that's just got to adapt to, all the stress you're putting on it. And so I sucked it up and thought, there was a little period there where I thought, man, it'd be easier just being a corpsman out in fleet or going to a hospital. Why do I want to put myself through this?
Right.
And I think I might have thought that for a day or two, but it wasn't, man, I don't want to do this.
Right.
So, I was pretty heart set that I wanted to be a Navy SEAL from a pretty young age. So, but we had a lot of fun. There's times when you look back, some of it's funnier, Wes, when you look back on it than when you're in the moment. But, and they also did a little experiment with our class. First phase is conditioning, which is 7 to 8 weeks. I don't know why they call it conditioning, because they just break you down. Second phase is traditionally diving, and third phase is the island.
Right.
Well, many years ago, back in the Vietnam era, they switched it. It was San Clemente Island was second phase, and then dive phase was third. Well, I guess they were losing a lot of guys in pool competency and figured if they switched it up, maybe they would leave San Clemente Island after second phase with a little more confidence. But we still lost a couple of guys in pool comp, and it really didn't make any difference. And I don't know whether they just did that with our class and maybe 135, but they went back to the, conditioning, dive phase, and then land warfare.
Yeah.
I think it's a social phenomenon. I think you put 100 to 200 guys together, and you're going to get 25 to 30% that gel and that trust each other and that work well together and know, generally you've got each other's back. And the other, 50 to 70% are just, they're not going to gel for whatever reason.
Yep. There's actually a former SEAL that he's kind of popularized this 40% concept. Have you heard of that?
I think so, but go ahead and refresh me.
But he's saying basically when you think you're done.
Oh, yeah.
You're really only 40% done.
Right.
And you basically told that story on that Saturday, or that, you've already been sugar cookied, right? Got wet and sandy. You're in full camo, and you got to do a 5-mile run, and you catch up to the instructors because, just getting out of the water, you were probably thinking, I'm done, right? And then I got to run 5 miles. Okay, I'm really done. And then it seemed like you were only 40% done.
Well, no, we did PT. You're right. We did PT after sitting in the surf for 45 minutes, an hour.
Right.
We were cold when we got out. We were really, really cold. Maybe it wasn't 45 minutes an hour. It seemed that it was a long time. And then we go and do PT with the class. When you start off in first phase, you're doing 20, 25 push-ups, maybe 30 at a time. When you're in second and third phase, you're doing 40 to 50 push-ups each set, and 30, 40, 50 bodybuilders, 200, 300, 400, flutter kicks, and all the different exercises, they amp up. And PT goes from, 30 to 40 minutes to well over an hour, and it's brutal. So PT in and of itself is hard, and then you go do a run. So doing that in wet gear, yeah, no, you're right, absolutely. And we got out of the water like, oh God, what's next? We'll fall in with your class for PT. Okay. Yep. All right. Roger that. You know what I think? I think sometimes if you think too much, and I think most guys will tell you, you got to silence that roommate in your head. And if that gets to winding up, yeah, that could talk you into that maybe you don't want to be there, or make a difficult task even harder. You got to shut that out and just focus on the moment.
Yeah.
You just focus on the next foot in front of you. If you try to eat the elephant in one bite, you're not going to do it. So I think that's probably something I learned in Buds.
One of the guys I had on, and I'm forgetting who, but it basically said the same thing. He's like, don't think of 6 or 7 weeks, right? Don't think of 3 phases. Don't think of a year. He was like, at one point it was like, just make it to the next meal.
Absolutely.
Right. And then it was like, just make it through the next evolution, right? Just get through PT, right? Okay, I know PT is only 1 hour. I will get through PT. I'm not going to worry about it if there's a run. I'm not going to think if there's an inspection after that. Just get through this one task right now and then tackle the next. And so I see that with entrepreneurs, they'll get overwhelmed. It's like, well, I'm launching this business. I got to get new software. I got to get my CRM going. I got to get emails. I got to get a landing page. I got to get a website. I got to get a webinar hosting platform. I got to get my social media going. Then I got to do paid traffic. Then I got to get some PR. I just shouldn't even start. And it's like, no, you should. You do have a lot to do, but go ahead and start.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. Execution. Paralysis by analysis. That's one of the things that I did not like about the bank. And I'll go back. I digress for a minute on that point that I was talking about leasing cars. Well, our group in Florida all had retail car experience, and I had actually had some training for a few months. I worked at a Ford dealership, so we all had retail selling experience. And the bank was trying to stem its losses on the lease residuals. So what they did is they set us up in a semi-call center at one of the branches over in Palm Beach. And a half a dozen of us took a shift from 6 p.m. to midnight, which was 3 to 9 over on the West Coast in Arizona. And we were trying to sell the lease end cars to the folks at a discount, but not as much as the residual was going to get hit at wholesale at the auctions. So again, trying to recapture some of that loss for the bank. The point of the story is the analysts wanted to come up with reporting measures and metrics to report back on and all these different guidelines. And I told them, one of the planning is, I said, guys, you know what? Let's just go do it. Let's go in. We know what the cars are worth. We know what the bottom line is, that we can sell these cars hopefully back to the customers that have got them on lease. They're not going to turn them in. Hopefully they'll keep it. That's going to stem, rather than a $4,000 loss, you take a $2,000 or maybe a $1,000 or no loss. But you got to do something. And if we sit around here analyzing, the losses just keep growing. And that was one of the things that used to frustrate me tremendous with the bank was some very bright people, but they wanted to sit around and talk about strategy and the plan that they were going to implement. And sometimes you just got to get out there and talk to the customer, talk to the client, and get the conversation going.
Yeah.
Execution.
Well, especially, I see that in sales. I mean, people get themselves wrapped around the axle and so much head trash that they don't pick up the phone. All right. So what if they say this, or what if they give me this objection, or what if they, ask for this form? I'm like, okay, handle it. I'm like, what if they say yes?
Sure.
But it's Absolutely. Like, you gotta go get bloodied up. Right. I mean, just like jujitsu, right? I went yesterday. We had a small class and we had a bunch of big purple belts and some advanced blue belts. And I mean, I texted my buddy after, who didn't make it. And I said, man, I feel like I regressed yesterday. He's like, I feel like I regress every day.
You might. It goes in peaks and valleys. You're learning that, or that now. I mean, you've heard that term probably, Wes. You got to lose to win.
Yep. Yeah, and you got to mix it up. You got to put the time in on the mat. And now I really see. It's like they say, there's no failure, right? You win or you learn. And the fortunate thing was the group we had yesterday. They were all good teachers, right? They'd smash me and then show me what happened, and then smash me again and then show me what happened. So it wasn't just a bunch of butt kicking. It was a butt kicking followed by a lesson.
Right.
And honestly, I think you gotta have those failures. The times that I really screwed up or didn't finish a submission, that sticks with me. I'm like, why couldn't I get that done? And then they show me why. Boom. Now I remember. If it came easy, I'd take it for granted and maybe not focus on the specifics. And it wouldn't be a reliable move for me later on when the pressure's really on. But I mean, people, they don't stick with it. I don't know. Have you seen that in your career? I mean,
absolutely.
They're just not.
Yeah, I've seen it in every aspect of my own life, whether it was in banking at Edward Jones, certainly, or, in SEAL team, where you're going to have setbacks. I'll tell you a quick one. I've got a friend who their son went through officer candidate school and had always been a stellar student, and mind absolutely blown when they got a C on one of the tests, and it just rocked their world. And that's, you'll hear people talk about guys that make it through SEAL team training and that go into the teams. I think sometimes it's a disservice when you hear about, well, this guy was captain of the football team or captain of the wrestling team, and he was a straight A student and, the man of the community, blah, blah, blah. That's still the exception in the teams. The teams is the B student, the guy that just doesn't quit, that, he hung in there on the football team, or he hung in there as a wrestler and didn't quit. He made the team. He may have been second string, but he worked his way to first string. And he may not have been state champ, but he went to the finals. That's more the story. It's the story of the struggle. And, there was a podcast recently. I don't know if you caught it, with Jocko and Joe Rogan. Did you hear that?
I haven't heard his recent one. No.
You don't mind me talking about it, do you?
No.
No. What they were talking about, actually, the subject was suicide, and that you see people give up in life in the grander scale, in the ultimate, where they lose that fight. They lose that want to get that next inch to move forward. And I'm not talking about unbridled ambition. I'm talking about being engaged in what it is that you're doing. And knowing that there will be setbacks. You're going to get up mornings and you're going to feel like not going to jiu-jitsu, or your business has had 2 or 3 months where, you've called this client over and over again, or you've put all these practices into play and nothing seems to be working. Sometimes it really is just showing up, and things will eventually, fall into place. That's been my experience anyhow.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a good point, because I see everybody thinks it's all roses and champagne and Tiffany cufflinks, right? But in any endeavor, I mean, I've gone through those lulls, and like working out has been one thing that's been kind of my escape. But I went through a long stretch where I was just maintaining, right? It was like, all right, I'm not having any big gains, but I'm not stopping either, because I saw something very recently, and it was a guy, I think it was a priest, talking about, the hardest thing is like to go back to church after you fail, right? After you some big sin or something. But it applies to anything. It's like the day you skip the gym, the hardest day is that second day.
Right.
Because it's so easy. Well, I skipped yesterday. What's one more day? And then, then those 2 days become 2 months, become 2 years. And it's just true with anything. It's like, do something every day to advance your goal, right? To move a little bit closer. And some days it's just holding on, right? And, or maybe instead of falling back 20 feet, you only fell back 10, but you held on, right? You put the grip out there, and just like in jiu-jitsu, right? I roll these bigger guys, and it's like, okay, can I make it 30 seconds instead of 20 seconds today? Okay, that's a victory. I got some guys I go against. It's like they used to tap me out 6 times in 6 minutes, and now we fight to a draw. I'm like, okay, that's a win.
Sure.
I didn't get him,
Sure.
but he didn't get me. Or he only got me 3 times instead of 6. So did I fail or did I win? I don't know. I feel like that's a victory, but
it is a victory. It's like you said, you either win, you get the submissions, or or you learn. And I think, I trained at one gym for a couple of years, same organization, but I wound up going out to another gym within the organization under the main guy, Rob Kahn, who is Hoist Gracie's first black belt. And he actually trained out there in Torrance with Hoist. And he was out of New York City originally. But, you go through these, it probably looks like an EKG or a stock market, chart as far as your progression goes. And you go through these lulls where just something's not clicking for you. And you feel like you said, earlier in our discussion here that I feel like I got worse. There's probably days where you digress, but are you really digressing? Or are you just learning to work through the exhaustion, or through, somebody puts an elbow in your face, or you get somebody that's brand new. You've been at it for 6 months or a year, and you get somebody that's in there the first or second time and they catch you, or, that's humbling. I've been at it now a little over 5 years, and I'll see somebody come in that's a collegiate wrestler. And after a few months, I have a real hard time catching them now, tapping them. I still catch them eventually, but it's harder. And that'll work on you, like, wow, what am I doing wrong? Well, I still got a ways to go. And I think that's what's also interesting about the art, is that anybody that says they've mastered Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they're fooling themselves.
They're a fool, huh?
Yeah. If you got Hoist Gracie, if you got Hoist Gracie going around with a blue belt on now to sort of set the example that you're always a student.
Yeah.
And that winds up, I think, at least for me, it translates into being a better student in other areas. I recently went to a shooting course a couple of months ago, and I hadn't been to a shooting course in many years. And I just took the jiu-jitsu, stance that I'm going to make mistakes, or, I'm not going to catch this the first time. I'm not going to be on point the first, 50 rounds. And to my surprise, I wasn't overly hard on myself the first couple of times that, I didn't draw right, or I didn't, my grouping wasn't, great. And after 100 rounds or so, my groupings started really coming together on their own. So the progress, or that, you're like the trigger pull, you're getting surprised. And I think that's the best way to approach life, taking it on a broader, perspective, that when you put the work in and you focus on the task at hand, you really, really are present with that, be it jiu-jitsu, be it shooting, be it sales, be it business. Focus on the task at hand. Have a plan, obviously. Before you know it, things start going your way. And it's not luck, obviously. It's preparation is meeting opportunity.
You think people just have unrealistic expectations nowadays about things, and maybe don't have a team, don't have a partner?
I think that's a good question, Wes. I think expectations, I think part of the problem is in some of the stories that we tell in media, whether it's in books or in film. Remember that Michael J. Fox, he started off in the mailroom, and a month later he's the CEO of the company. I mean, some of that stuff makes a fun, 2-hour movie story, but it's stupid. There's only so many CEOs out there. There's only so many owners of business out there, and I wouldn't discourage somebody from doing that, but there's a long path to get there. And I think we skip through a lot of that work when they tell these stories. You don't hear of the struggles. You don't hear of, somebody gets cancer along the way. There's a death in the family. There's, you get fired from a job. Like you said, how do you bounce back from that? Oh, I'm fired. I'm worthless. No, you regroup, and you re-engage, just like jiu-jitsu.
Do you think that's maybe even a myth that gets propagated from special warfare? Because, it's like, you're this lone wolf, Rambo. You can bring down Army helicopters with exploding bows and arrows. But I think people overlook the true name is, you're a team guy, right? If you're not on the team, because I think a lot of people don't realize this. You can have the trident removed, right? You can earn the trident, and you can lose the trident by not acting right.
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think to that point, you hear a lot about Dev Group or SEAL Team 6, our version of Delta Force. They've been in the media a lot. They've done some great things, but people don't realize it takes minimum 5 to 7 years in the teams to be eligible to go to Dev Group, and then it takes years at Dev Group to sharpen your craft. I talk to some of these kids that want to go into the teams, and they talk about Dev Group. Like, Dev Group is the all-stars of SEAL Team. And in a way, sometimes that's a disservice. There's guys in the regular, East-West Coast teams that don't want to go to Dev Group. They don't want that op tempo. They don't want, that's a different lifestyle. They enjoy the grind of deploying to whatever theater their team deploys to. They enjoy that. They enjoy being in a training cell, or guys like doing a rotation through training out in the desert or going different places. So there's different places and ways to shine. And I think I'm just using that as an example that, all you ever hear about is the quarterback. Well, there's the rest of the team that makes the quarterback, gives him the landscape to play on.
Right.
And I think that I take that all back to the media. I think that, you've only got so much time to get a message across, be it a commercial selling a product, in a film or in a story. You've got certain things that you've got to highlight. And I think that's where some of the problem lies, back to, you mentioned expectations with people of this perfection. And perfection is I would tell people, strive for excellence, not perfection.
Yeah, that's a good point. How did that serve you in going out on your own? Because that had to be a big transition, going from banking with a team and the structure and the plush carpet and the marble countertops, right, and columns, to being on your own.
I think what I like about Edward Jones, their platform is simply they started in small towns, the one-person office, and you have an assistant, a full-time assistant. That's very unique to the business. I liked that independence. I had worked from home in my previous job in indirect lending for the bank, and that just suited me. And Edward Jones likes to see people that have this progression of responsibility and of success before taking them on. It's not the type of, in general, there are exceptions, but you don't see people, finish up a finance degree at the university and then go to work for Edward Jones. Usually it's a second or sometimes third career where they've had a career in the military or teaching, or they had a small business. Those make great candidates. But people that can work on their own, to your point, self-motivated, can deal with setbacks. You get a lot of no's in this business, but it's about relationships and it's about follow through and being resilient.
Those who have not gone through the Make Every Sale course conducted by the Sales Whisperer, they get the no's. You come through the course, but anyway, I digress.
Right on, man. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, Wes. Go for it.
This was a public service announcement. We'll now return to our interview, already in progress. So, man, you're getting on a plane and you are heading to San Francisco. Now you're going to have an east-west coast swim, right? So what are the specs on the San Francisco swim?
Okay, so San Francisco swim, go to goldengatefrogman.com. goldengatefrogman.com. There you will see the registration to I Am Athlete, and it is a 1.5 mile point-to-point swim. The swim starts just outside of the Golden Gate Bridge on the north side, Kirby Cove. Swimmers will be transported to that starting point by boat on the morning of August 6th from Horseshoe Cove, which is at Fort Baker, also the north side of the bridge. We're catching a flood tide. You don't swim against the tide in San Francisco. We've got a couple of people that have helped us put this together, 30 plus years in organizing these events and in the area. San Francisco is beautiful, but it is deadly.
Yeah.
And it is no joke. The Alcatraz swim, I believe, is about the same distance, about 1.5 miles, and they got to catch the tides right on that. You either get swept out to sea, or you're going to Oakland. But it's 1.5 miles. Swim start's going to be 7:30, 7:45. The swim should be wrapped up. Everybody should be out of the water 1.5 miles, at 9:15 tops. We're going to have a little after party like we do in Tampa. The registration is $250. That covers the costs. Things are a little bit more expensive out there than in Tampa. And we're asking each swimmer to raise $2,500. I don't want that to discourage people. Some people are going to raise $1,500. That's great. What we don't want is somebody that, hey, I'm going to get out there, swim 1.5 miles, and show everybody how fast I swim, and I'll raise $100.
Right.
Go find another swim. That's not what this is about.
Right.
But we set it at $2,500, Wes, because the average swimmer in Tampa raises $2,100.
Nice.
So San Francisco, $2,500 should not be that much of a stretch. Again, we realize everyone's not going to raise $2,500. Some will do quite a bit more. Some will do a little less. But, if people are interested in the swim, which we hope that they are, they're doing it for the right reason. They're doing it to support the Navy SEAL Foundation. All of the proceeds go to the Navy SEAL Foundation, and that money is used for basically 6 legs to the stool: warrior support, education assistance, tragedy support, survival support, legacy preservation, and veterans transition out to 18, 24 months.
Wow, very nice. And what's the date of the swim?
August 6th. It's a Sunday. And we've had different people tell us, we should try this or we should try that. August 6th and August 20th were the only dates that were open August for the Marine Patrol to give us approval. We took the 6th because the conditions are ideal with respect to the water temperature not being too cold, not catching rain, not catching, August is why we picked that time. So this is what we chose. It also happens to be the day that registration opens for the Tampa Bay Frogman Swim.
Hey, look at there.
Yep. Well, and then the significance of that, Wes, is to commemorate Extortion 17, which went down August 6th of 2011.
Yep. I hear you. Well, I will be registering again. I don't know what y'all infected me somehow. I don't know. That's like some Navy SEAL, like NLP hypnosis you put on me, man.
Well, let me put you on the spot, Wes. What when you do the Tampa Bay Frogman Swim, and I'm pulling from you a little bit here. Talk just a little bit about just briefly about how it's not just a swim. I mean, it's an experience, is what most folks have said.
Hey, listen, I'm asking the questions here. Okay, this is my podcast. But all right, fine. I didn't know that much about it. So 17, 16, 15, so 14. Actually, the end of 2013, I was having a good year. John Doolittle reaches out. Hey, I'm doing this swim, and I sent him $500. Like, he asked for 50. I sent him 500, and he was blown away. Right? He's like, man, you're my biggest donor. And I was like, man, that's a shame, that more people don't know and that more people don't give more money to this cause. Right. And so he says, hey, you should do the swim with me next year. And, being the not very smart kind of guy that I am, I said, yeah, I'll do that. I've never done an open water swim my entire life. Not with goggles and gear. Out here, there's the Seal Beach, right? My buddy and I, we swim. That's a half a mile, and we just jumped in and swam it. So I'm not afraid of the water. I've just, face down with goggles is different, And but anyway, so I say, yeah, I'll do it. And then, and it didn't hit me till that morning of, right? And seeing like the ROTC kids coming out with the flags and the reading of the names, right? And you get the big A-frame of all of the guys that we're swimming for. And then I was given the badge with the history of the guy I was swimming in memory of. That's when it all hits home. It's like, man. And then, I've gotten to know the Dietzes, and Cindy Dietz she actually put the medal around my neck this past January, so Gold Star mom, and, son was killed what was the book? Lone Survivor, and the movie was one of her son was one of those guys. So that just brings it all home. Right. And, I keep swimming so I don't have to be rescued. Right. But I mean, my energy is just in bringing awareness. I'm happy to create a buzz, and I got a lot of people donating and becoming aware. And I think we take things for granted. We think, the government's just going to take care of everything. Right. These guys are veterans and everything's taken care of. And it's just
not at all.
Case.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely, Wes.
So that's why I do it.
No, we appreciate it, and your story is multiplied and hopefully cross-pollinated out here to San Francisco, where people will get that and realize that, as I mentioned, the teams have been in the news a lot over the last few years. Mostly, it's been for really good reasons, but there's a price that's paid for all that, and we try to honor it. By each swimmer swimming for a killed in action.
Yep.
Each swimmer possibly getting to meet one of the Gold Star mothers, fathers, wives, children that are there at the event, that on the other side at the finish it's a journey,
right.
you know, and while you're in the water, as you say, face down, you know, it's cold. It's not a pleasant swim.
No.
You get out, you're disoriented. You can't talk. Your legs are a little shaky. As you're getting your bearings, you're getting a coin put over your head from someone who has lost a loved one, someone who's lost somebody from that 0.7% of our country that gets out and serves in the military and writes a blank check the day that service begins. That's what you're doing it for. And whether you're a veteran like you and I or not, you're contributing to something that, you know, supports that ongoing culture. And we're greatly appreciative to it. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yep. My pleasure, man. Thanks for putting it on. All right, Rory O'Connor. I will get this produced quickly. We'll link to the GoldenGateFrogman.com. I'll link to the, as always, I link to the Tampa Bay Frogman Swim. So we'll be gearing that up come August. So, well, man, safe travels. Good luck. And thanks for taking time to share your story.
Thank you, Wes.
Hey, I hope you liked that episode. Rory's just a good dude. And the interesting thing is the different SEALs that I've interviewed to help bring awareness to the swim and to give you some insight into the mind of someone who has operated and performed at such a peak level. You know, these guys are very humble. They're modest. They're quiet. You know, they do have a little bit of a reputation, right? There's some young kids even now, but, you know, way back in the day before things got as competitive as they are, you know, these guys could be kind of rowdy. And they admit, you know, even now, some of the young kids, they get kind of rowdy, but they play at such a high level now, right? Or perform, I should say. The equipment is advanced. The technology is advanced. The need to minimize collateral damage, right? Just take out the bad guy, not the entire city block. The stakes are so high. These are some... They're tough warriors physically, right? But they're even tougher mentally. And all of them have talked about it. It's, you know, you can always go deeper. You can always dig deeper. And that's what they're trying to find through the process, the Hell Week, BUDS, and all the training is, do you have the mental toughness? And as an entrepreneur, it's really very similar. Do you have the mental toughness? Do you have the goal, the resiliency to get it done? You know, to have your computer crash, to lose contact data, to have a webinar not work, to do something that doesn't get recorded, you know, to get chargebacks and refunds, have people rip you off, to get sued. You know, I've been audited a couple times by the IRS and the Board of Equalization and the People's Republic of California. You know, do you have the guts to stick with it? Or are you just one of those looking for the easy button? Because it doesn't exist. And the crazy thing is, people spend so much time and energy looking for the easy button. If they would just apply that energy to creating something, you'd have it, right? And there's your easy button. Create something worthwhile, something that you own, something that has legs, and business will come to you. So, you know, like I said, hope you got a lot out of it. It was just a laid-back discussion, right? We're not, he's not making $1 bazillion with some new invention or some new idea. He's just a good guy getting after it and then giving back. And through that, he is growing. So, you know, get out of your cocoon, get out of your own head. If you think you're having a tough time, go volunteer, go help somebody, and you'll feel better. And things will improve. Just stop having that pity party, okay? And I know you're not doing that because you're listening to this episode. And hey, give me some feedback, please. Text the word WHISPER to 44222. Let me know what you're working on. Let me know if you'd like me to start a group. I'm only going to ask this a couple more episodes, and we'll see what the feedback is. So please, if you think, oh, I'm getting enough feedback, whatever. Nope, I'm not. First couple of episodes we've done this, hardly any input. So if that continues, then there won't be a group, and that's fine. I'll figure another way to spend my time. And probably create a program that I sell. So, hey, it all works out. But if you would like some input and be able to tell me what you'd like to see, speak now or forever hold your peace. So text the word WHISPER to 44222 and then leave a 5-star review on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, all those places. And remember to sell different.